Hello, I'm Valerie Bassett. I am Master Trainer here at Oakland Terminal. I am going to run through the pre-trip inspection for you today. I usually turn on the light and open the hood to start the pre-trip. I start from the front of the vehicle. At this point, I'm checking my light, my clearance light, my reflective paper markers in my headlights, making sure they're properly mounted, secured, clean, and working order. Of the proper color, red to the rear, amber everywhere else. Okay, I'm checking my oil to make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not leaking, at the proper mark between add and full. I'm checking my coolant to make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not leaking, at its proper mark between add and full. I'm checking my power steering to make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not leaking, at the proper mark between add and full, and it is belt driven. I'm checking my water pump, pointing down behind this right here, making sure that it's properly mounted and secured, not leaking, and it's also belt driven. Coming to this side, I'm checking my alternator, pointing down into here. I'm checking my alternator to make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not damaged, no frayed or loose wiring. It is also belt driven. I'm checking my hoses to make sure they are properly mounted, secured, not leaking in the engine compartment, and I'm also checking on the ground underneath to make sure there's no leaks. I am checking my steering box, pointing down in this section to make sure it's properly mounted, secured to the frame, that there are no leaking hoses. At the side of the vehicle, and I'm checking my front tire. This tire must be facing left, so you have to turn the wheel all the way to the left. I'm checking my nuts and bolts, my castle nuts, my tie rod, my pitman arm, my steering knuckles, and my cotter pins. Making sure there are no missing parts and that the cotter pins are in place. I'll be checking my spring and shock, making sure they're properly mounted and secure. The spring is not shifted or missing, and the shock is not leaking or damaged. I'm going to check my spring mount to make sure it's properly mounted and secured, no damage to the bushings or hangers. I'm checking my brake line to make sure it's properly mounted and secured, not damaged or leaking, in good condition. I'm checking my rotors and pads, making sure they're properly mounted and secured, no signs of grease or oil, and that the pads are not worn dangerously thin. Checking the condition of my tire to make sure it is no cuts, no bulges, no uneven wear or tread separation. Making sure the tread depth is no less than 4/32 of an inch. I'm checking the inflation with a gauge or a mallet. I'm checking the stem to make sure it's properly mounted and secured, and that the stem has a cap. I'm checking my rim to make sure it's properly mounted and secured, not damaged, no weld repairs. I'm checking my lugs and my studs, make sure they're properly mounted and secured, no rust trails or shiny threads, no cracks or distortion at the bowl holes, no damage or missing studs. I'm checking my hub seal to make sure it's properly mounted and secured, not leaking. Okay. Next, I will check my doors. I will check my mirror to make sure it's properly mounted and secured, it's clean, not damaged. I'm going to check my door handle to make sure it opens and closes the door properly. I am checking the seal to make sure it's properly mounted and secured, not frayed or damaged. I am checking the step to make sure it supports weight. At this point, I'm having 3 points of connection. My foot is on the step, my hand is on the door, and my next hand is grabbing the rail. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured and supports weight. I'm checking my drive shaft, which runs from the front to the rear. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, not leaking, and no signs of foreign objects. I'm checking my exhaust system, which runs from the front to the tailpipe, making sure it's properly mounted and secured, no signs of soot trails. I'm checking my frame, which runs from the front to the rear, making sure it's properly mounted and secured. I'm checking the cross member and ribs, make sure it's not damaged, no broken wheels. Okay, so now I'm going to check my reflective lights and tape, making sure they're clean, working properly, of the right color, red to the rear, amber everywhere else. I will check my gas line, tank, and cap. My gas tank, properly mounted secured, no damage or broken straps. My gas line, properly mounted secured, not leaking, and the cap is secured. Next, I'll be checking my leaf springs and shock, which I'm pointing in front of this tire. My leaf springs are not shifted or missing. The shocks are not damaged or leaking. Properly mounted secure. I'm checking my U-bolt. Make sure it's properly mounted secure, not loose. The U-bolt mounts the leaf spring to the axle behind the tire. I am checking the brake hose and line to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not leaking, in good condition. I am checking my rotors and pads to make sure they're properly mounted and secured. No signs of grease or oil. The pads are not worn dangerously thin. I'll be checking my tire condition to make sure it is no cuts, no bulges, no uneven wear or tread separation. The tread depth should be no less than 2/32 of an inch. I am checking my inflation with a gauge or a mallet. I will check my stem to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not missing or damaged, and it has a cap. I am checking my rim to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not damaged, no wheel repairs. I'm checking my lugs and my studs to make sure they're properly mounted secure, no rust trails or shiny threads, no cracks or distortion at the bolt holes, no damage or missing studs. I am checking my axle seal to make sure it's properly mounted secure, not leaking, filled to its mark. I am checking my bud spacing, pointing down and in to make sure it's evenly spaced, properly mounted secure, no signs of foreign objects. I'm checking my clearance lights and I'm checking my rear lights to make sure they are properly mounted secure, of the right color, clean, red to the rear, amber everywhere else. Check my door handle, making sure it opens and closes the door properly. I'm checking my hinge and my door tie, making sure they're properly mounted secure, not damaged or missing. I am checking my seal to make sure it's properly mounted and secure, not frayed or damaged. I will check this side the same as I did the opposite side. I'm going to check my lift door to make sure the handle opens and closes properly. I'm going to check my hinges to make sure they're properly mounted and secure, not damaged or missing. I'm going to check my door seal to make sure it's properly mounted and secure, not frayed or damaged. I'll check my lift to make sure it's properly mounted and secure and that it is operational. You do not have to operate the lift. Okay, I'm checking my passenger entry doors, making sure that they open and close properly. I'm checking the seals to make sure they are properly mounted secure, not frayed or damaged. I'm checking my handrails to make sure they are properly mounted secure. I'm checking the flooring to make sure it can support weight. I will be checking my fire extinguisher to make sure it's properly mounted secure and fully charged. I will check to make sure I have 3 emergency red reflective triangles. I will also be checking to make sure in this door overhead that I have enough fuses and circuit breakers to operate this vehicle. Okay, so I'm checking my seating to make sure my uppers are connected to my lowers and they are bolted, properly mounted, secured to the floor. They are in good condition and also clean. I am checking all of my seating as I walk through to make sure they are all properly mounted and secure. When I open this door, the alarm should sound. I'm counting off all my emergency exits. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the ceiling, and 5, the passenger entry door. I am checking the seal on my hatch, making sure it's properly mounted and secure, not frayed or damaged. Okay, I'm going to perform my safe start. Foot on the brake, turning the key forward. The ABS light comes on and goes off quickly. That lets me know the ABS is working properly. Now I'm checking my oil gauge to make sure the needle rises to the normal operating range and the needles are working properly. Okay, now I'm checking my amp voltmeter to make sure the needle rises to the normal operating range and the needle is working properly. I am checking my temperature gauge to make sure the needle rises to the normal operating range as the engine warms. Okay, so next I'm checking my heat defrost to make sure it works on each speed setting and there are no missing parts. I'm checking my windshield to make sure it is properly secured, no cracks or chips, there are no presence of illegal stickers. I'm checking my wiper arms and blades, making sure they are properly mounted and secured, the blades are not frayed or damaged, that they work on each speed setting, and that the fluid is full. Now I'm checking my indicators, my left indicator, my right indicator, my four-ways, and my high beams. I would get out and check to make sure all of my lighting is working. I would ask the inspector to check to make sure my brake lights are working. Turning them all off. I'm going to engage my park brake. I will hold my service brake, attempt to put the vehicle in drive. I cannot, which lets me know that the park brake is working properly. I will release the brake. I will check my hydraulic brake, pumping the brake 3 times. 1, 2, 3, holding it for 5 seconds. My brake pedal did not depress to the floor. It did not move, which lets me know my hydraulic brake is working properly. Now I will check my service brake. I will hold the service brake, put the vehicle in drive. I'm going to roll forward 4 to 5 feet and then apply my brake. My vehicle stopped. I'm putting it back in park. That lets me know my service brake is working properly. I blow the horn. I have completed my pre-trip.